Hello?
Hello, Mark. I can hear you very well. This is
Excellent.
great.
So, can you see me? Probably not.
Not. I will. I will give you the option to go as a host.
Okay.
In a few minutes.
Okay.
So you can share and turn on the camera.
Fantastic.
So now we are waiting for more participants to join us. Currently, we have more than 30, and it's live streamed in YouTube. So you can get all the questions through YouTube. I will share with you the link.
Okay. By email or? Oh, here. I see it. Okay.
It's here in the Zoom.
Hi, Mark. This is Tilo.
Hey, Tilo. Good to hear you.
Good. And the link should also be up in the top left-hand corner of the Zoom window. It says live on YouTube. Or at least I'm seeing that.
Let me just, this browser, let me see. I have a browser problem with the YouTube that you had here, but let me see. I can do that.
Also check also in the Zoom meeting window that you have your video enabled. That's the bottom left-hand corner of the window.
Let me just see. I have that. Let me check. So I have this one here. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay.
So I think the case will.
Just after 10 minutes, you can turn it on. It's okay.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay, great. I'm going silent now. Good luck.
Let me just check if that's for the YouTube.
You can start share your screen, Mark. With
yeah. Okay. So let me see. I turned on this one. Okay.
So I will share mine just for a few minutes to welcome the participants, and later on I will give you the full access to share yours as well.
Okay. What I have here is I shared now my screen, and you should see my slides if that is visible.
Yes,
I don't know.
Yes, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, Mark. Just one thing is there's usually about a 2-second delay on between what you see on your screen versus what you see on the YouTube feed.
Okay. No, I see the YouTube feed. I opened the YouTube feed on my laptop to the right. Okay.
Okay, that's great. So I will start, Mark. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But the idea, just a second, the idea is that I speak for 60, 70 minutes and then we have about 20 minutes Q&A, or should they ask, well, what's the normal format?
Yeah, so I will start for 10 minutes, then you can take the 90 minutes as you wish,
okay.
include with the Q&A.
Sounds good.
All right, perfect. السلام عليكم جميعا، مساء الخير. أرحب فيكم في اللقاء الرابع من لقاءات البرنامج الوطني لتنمية مهارات الشباب الخاصة بالمشاركين في مبادرة مشاريع شباب عمان. طبعا الحين المبادرة راح تطلق باسم مبادرة مشاريع شباب عمان الخاصة بالمشاركين في البرنامج الوطني لتنمية مهارات الشباب. طبعا هذه المرحلة مثل ما تعرفوا هي مرحلة مفتوحة لجميع المشاركين، لا يوجد فيها منافسة على عدد معين من المقاعد أو عدد معين من المشاريع. كل المشاريع اللي راح يتم إرسالها إلى البرنامج بنفس الخط الزمني اللي خططناه اللي هم المشاركين في المرحلة الثانية في سبتمبر. كل المشاريع اللي راح تسلم إلى فريق العمل أو البرنامج راح يتم تقييمها، وراح يتم راح نذكر لكم بالضبط التفاصيل الخاصة بنوعية المشاريع والمعايير. طبعا المرحلة القادمة مثل ما تكلمنا في الويبينار السابق، في اللقاء السابق، راح تتضمن يعني ميزة إضافية. الميزة من الممكن للمشاركين في البرنامج تشكيل فريق عمل. تشكيل فريق عمل نتكلم عن يعني فريق عمل مشكل من مجموعة خبرات اللي يحتاجها المشروع للتنفيذ. فهذه المرحلة اللي انتم فيها راح تركز على التنفيذ بشكل أساسي، وليست مرحلة خلينا نقول الايديشن أو الأفكار فقط. فمرحلة التنفيذ، وراح نتكلم عن البوت كامب كيف ممكن يساعدكم بالفعل في هذه الخطوة. يعني البوت كامب اللي راح يكون إن شاء الله خلال الجمعة والسبت في مسقط راح يساعدكم بشكل كبير، وراح نتكلم عن التفاصيل. طيب بالنسبة لفريق العمل بس حاب أركز على هذه النقطة. عند تشكيل فريق العمل أو بما يسمى بكو فاوندر، أي مؤسس مشارك للمشروع، يعني المشروع يعني يتكون عادة من عدة عناصر. المشروع يتطلب المعرفة في جانب التكنولوجيا، أو المشروع لازم يرتبط بالتكنولوجيا. المشروع يتطلب معرفة في النطاق أو في المجال أو القطاع. يعني إذا كان المشروع متعلق بالصحة، فالشخص ضروري جدا يكون عنده خلفية صحية أو خلفية طبية أو خلفية في المجال. أو إذا كان في البيئة وغيرها، يعني في التعليم أو أي مجال. يعني الشخص ممكن يكون حاصل على شهادة في هذا المجال أو متخصص، أو فعلا عنده هواية في هذا المجال يعرف فيه بشكل متعمق. يعني هذه ما تكون عبارة عن معلومة شخص ممكن حاب يتعلمها من خلال المشروع. لا، المشروع يفترض أنه يكون مبني على المهارات أو الخبرات أو المعارف اللي عند الشخص المشارك أو فريق العمل أو الشركاء المؤسسين. الجزء الأهم من هذا اللي هو يعني إيجاد الشخص الشريك المؤسس الكو فاوندر اللي عنده الجانب التقني. الجانب التقني كثير مهم. يعني إذا كانت الفكرة مبنية على إنشاء تطبيق إلكتروني يخص الصحة على سبيل المثال، فأنت كمشارك أنت متخصص في الصحة، لكن تحتاج الشخص اللي ممكن يعمل لك التطبيق الإلكتروني كشريكك في هذا المشروع، ككو فاوندر، كشريك مؤسس في هذا المشروع، بحيث أنه يكون العمل ما بين نطاق العمل اللي هو التخصصي ونطاق العمل التقني اللي قادر الشخص ينفذه. النقطة الثالثة اللي هي الامبلمنتيشن أو هو تنفيذ المشروع. طبعا مثل ما سبق ذكرت لكم بنعطيكم التايم لاين والخط الزمني للأشهر القادمة. راح يكون فيها مجموعة ويبينارز، راح يكون فيها مجموعة خلينا نقول عناصر تسلم، أو راح نتابعها بشكل مبسط، ما راح نتابعها بشكل مكثف. لكن الأهم من كل هذا كله التنفيذ. يعني إذا مشروع أو مشارك يجيب مشروعه في أغسطس أو سبتمبر منفذ على أرض الواقع، فعلا هذا راح يتم تقييمه وراح يمنح الفرصة مثل بقية المشاركين في البرنامج. يعني نتكلم عن المشاركين اللي هم في المرحلة الثانية. فالفرصة هذه جدا ذهبية. أنا يعني ممكن أقول للجميع لا تفوت الفرصة. الفرصة راح تكون كثير مهمة، خصوصا تبدأ من البوت كامب. طبعا البوت كامب أتمنى الجميع يحضر. عندنا حاليا في هذه المرحلة أكثر من 300 مشارك. ندعو الجميع يحضر هذا البوت كامب من دون استثناء، لأنه بتكون فائدة متعمقة جدا في البوت كامب. يعني البوت كامب بيكون يوم الجمعة ويوم السبت. أيام الويكند ما راح يكون عندكم التزامات عادة في العمل، أو في يعني ممكن تكون التزامات خارج العمل، لكن في النهاية هي كلها يومين تستثمروا فيها وقتكم، تستغلوها للوصول لأهدافكم. نطمح أن نشوف أكبر عدد من المشاريع، نطمح نشوف المشاركين من البرنامج يشتغلوا مع بعض في هذا البوت كامب، أو يشتغلوا مع زملائهم من خارج البرنامج. يعني ممكن تشكلوا فرقكم من خارج البرنامج كمصممين، مبرمجين، خبراء مختصين في مجالات مختلفة، لكن في البوت كامب نريد نشوفكم كمشاركين حاضرين معنا. طبعا راح أمشي بشكل مختصر جدا على الأجندة. الأجندة اللي راح يتضمنها البوت كامب، أول يوم يوم الجمعة الصباح راح يكون معانا، يعني نبدأ من الساعة 8 للساعة 8:30 بيكون التسجيل. أتمنى الجميع يكون حاضر في الموعد على أساس فعلا ما يفوتكم أي شيء. كلمة البداية أو الترحيب الساعة 8:30. راح يكون عندنا أول جلسة الساعة 9:30. بعدين بيكون عندنا بريك للغداء وللصلاة، صلاة الجمعة. بعدين ننتقل إلى الوركشوبس. الوركشوبس هذه جدا مهمة. راح يكون معانا تقريبا 50 إلى 60 خبير من السلطنة ومن خارج السلطنة، يعني مجموعة كبيرة منهم راح يكونوا من خارج السلطنة. راح يقدموا كل خبراتهم. راح نتقسم إلى تقريبا 10 قاعات. كل قاعة يكون فيها مجموعة من المشاركين. راح يكون في نفس الوقت مجموعة من الوركشوبس راح تحضروها. ففي تخصصات مختلفة، يعني نبتدي من الديزاين ثينكينج أو التفكير التصميمي، من الفند ريزنج اللي هو إيجاد التمويل للمشاريع، من تصميم النماذج الأولية اللي هي البروتوتايبس، إلى آخر التسويق وغيرها. فراح تكون هذه القاعات متاحة لكم. كل شخص يختار التخصص اللي يحتاجه في مشروعه. بعدها راح يكون عندنا بما يسمى الساعة 4:30 ما يسمى المنتورشيب سيشن، بحيث أنه يكون عندنا مجموعة من المنتورز من السلطنة ومن خارج السلطنة. راح يجلسوا معاكم في الطاولات بحيث أنه يكون 1 to 1، يسمعوا أفكاركم، إيش بالضبط حابين توصلوا فيه، وراح يوفروا لكم الدعم خلينا نقول الاستشاري المباشر. يعني مباشرة راح تحصل فيدباك من الخبير هذا يساعدك كيف ممكن تطور هذا المشروع، كيف ممكن تطبقه. طبعا بعض الخبراء راح يكونوا معاكم في السيشن اللي قبلها اللي هي في الوركشوب، او بعدين بينتقلوا معاكم في المنتورشيب سيشن. النقطة الأخيرة اللي هي المنتورشيب دينر، أو خلينا نقول نتوركينج دينر. هذا راح نتحرك من الكونفنشن سنتر. طبعا أتوقع استلمتوا الدعوات كلكم. رجاء تعملوا اكسبت للدعوة على أساس نعرف مين جاي ومين ما راح يجي، على اساس نكون جاهزين بالنسبه للعدد. المنتورشيب او النتوركينج دينر راح يكون في مطعم روزنا، طبعا قريب من الكونفنشن سنتر مركز المعارض، تقريبا 5 دقائق. ممكن تاخذوا سياراتكم من مركز المعارض الى المطعم. طبعا المطعم رائع، محجوز للبرنامج، وراح نكمل فيه عملية النتوركينج أو التعارف مع الخبراء والمختصين، وممكن ندخل في نقاشات معهم بشكل كبير. فراح تكون فرصة كبيرة جدا للالتقاء ب رواد أعمال من مختلف الدول العربية ودول العالم، مستثمرين ومختصين في موضوع الاستثمار في المشاريع الناشئة. واخيرا نفس الشيء، عباره عن مشرفين او موجهين منتورز من السلطنه، عندهم معرفه متخصصه في السوق العماني، ممكن تستفيدوا منهم بشكل كبير. هذا بالنسبه لليوم الاول. بالنسبه لليوم الثاني نبدا بنفس الطريقه. اول جلسه تبدا الساعه 8:30 الى الساعه 10 و15 دقيقه. ثاني جلسه راح تكون عندنا الساعه 10:30. وبعدين عندنا بريك للاستراحة. في اليوم الثاني راح ندعو مجموعة كبيرة من رجال الأعمال في السلطنة، مستثمرين من السلطنة، المؤسسات المعنية بالاستثمار ودعم المشاريع من السلطنة. راح تكون فرصة كبيرة جدا للتعلم يعني والاستفادة. طبعا قبل هذا السيشن راح يكون عندكم وركشوب. الوركشوب اليوم البروفيسور مارك راح يتكلم عن تفاصيل الوركشوب اللي راح يقدمها في اليوم الثاني، وكثير من الأشياء راح تكون مرتبطة. لاحقا بيكون عندنا نتوركينج لانش مع الخبراء المختصين، بيكون نرجع بعدين إلى الساعة 3 إلى النتوركس إلى الوركشوب، وأخيرا نعمل كلوزنج. طبعا الكلوزنج راح يكون بداية وانطلاقة للمرحلة القادمة بكل تفاصيلها. أتمنى الجميع يحضر على أساس نشرح كافة التفاصيل. راح نكون متواجدين مع فريق عمل البرنامج، مع المشرفين والموجهين، نوفر الدعم فيما يتعلق بالمرحلة القادمة بعد البوت كامب. يعني البوت كامب هذا هو عبارة عن بداية لتقريبا 3 أشهر من العمل معاكم ومن تنفيذ مشاريعكم وبكل جدية. يعني أي حد فعلا قاعد ينفذ مشروعه راح يحصل الدعم المطلوب في من البرنامج. طبعا حاب فقط كنت أبدأ الويبن هذا الجزء. حاليا بنتقل إلى البروفيسور مارك، وراح ياخذكم بكل بتفاصيل البرنامج وراح يقدمه في البوت كامب. طبعا فقط Professor Mark, he is one of the leading professors from جامعة University of EPFL in Switzerland, and they will be with us this weekend. So please pay attention for Professor Mark, and Professor Mark, you can go ahead with your part. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Let me start my video. Okay. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Here we go. Now you see me. I first want to welcome you warmly to this webinar, and thank you very much, Case, for the nice introduction. This is a webinar tonight that is foreshadowing what we will be doing also on the weekend when I see you on Saturday in Oman, in your beautiful country. What we will be doing tonight is talk about several issues, and at the end of the talk, I will give you also some tasks to do until Saturday, which is very vital to your firm, to the understanding of what you can actually accomplish with your firm in terms of the opportunities that you see and how you can grow your venture maybe to a more significant size than currently imagined. Let me motivate this by making you understand it with an example. I show you one. Let me just see if this is visible. This should be my slides. Here we go. When you look at some examples of what you are doing with your ventures, let me point out right from the beginning that many of the decisions you have made were decisions where you maybe have an assumption that you are doing something worthwhile. What I want to challenge you and what I want to make you think about is whether there might not be more interesting, more valuable, more promising activities that you could engage in. And let me just look at one example to drive home my point and to make the case very clear. Here you're going to see on the slide a special ceramic. This was developed for NASA for protecting the space shuttle when it comes back into from its trip to outer space. And it protects the space shuttle from going up basically in flames. It has this heat shielding property at the bottom of the shuttle. And when you think about this ceramic, it's a ceramic tile. It has this particular application in this domain here, which is the aerospace industry. But if you think more broadly what this can mean, what this could do, you can say, well, this is not only a ceramic that can be applied to the space shuttle, but it's actually a ceramic that can be more widely applied. And other applications are, for instance, in catalytic converters for cars, the automotive industry. We have the same type of effect, the inverse effect in fridges. You see chimneys here. And then there's even a Dilbert, where there is a funny application. Dilbert says here, nose puppies, get your nose puppies. What's a nose puppy? It's a little ceramic puppy that fits in your nose. Find a need and fill it is my motto. It doesn't make sense at all, but it also would be an application for the ceramic that you might have developed. So if you look at this example, what does this actually mean in terms of startup creation? It means a couple of very important things. Number one, you might say, okay, I focus on the aerospace domain, and the aerospace domain is probably an interesting one, but it also has, at least at the time when we look here, the space shuttle era, very limited growth potential. Yeah, so you might want to consider the size of that domain, that market. It's probably a couple of thousand tiles that you could sell. When you think more broadly, you could sell the same ceramic then to the automotive industry. That's millions and millions and millions of parts. Many, many more than you could possibly sell in the space shuttle domain, on the aerospace industry. And similar for fridges or chimneys. When you look more closely, what does it mean? It means, well, these markets, the opportunities that you have identified here are very different in terms of their attractiveness. They are very different in terms of how they shape also the venture. It's not only about the performance, it's also about the possibility that you create for your venture to be a growing company, to find actually the type of fertile ground that you aspire to. But beyond that, it also shapes a lot the identity of your company, who you are actually as a company. And just make that thought experiment now with me. If you think about the ceramic, if you should decide to go into the aerospace industry, that company will look very different compared to a company that goes in the automotive or in the fridge industry. And the type of people that you will attract, the type of people that you will be able to hire, how outsiders think about your company will be completely different. An aerospace company is just very different to a fridge or a catalytic converter manufacturer. So from that perspective, more generally speaking, you have some very early decisions, what you do with the competences you have in your venture, that shape not only the performance potential of your venture, but in a very fundamental manner, the identity of what you do. And what I want to do in this webinar is to make you alert to this very fundamental decision, because it's probably one of the most fundamental ones that you will ever make in your entrepreneurial life, and one that we often gloss over because we assume you have an opportunity and then you are engaging in lean processes, trying to understand the market, while not necessarily zooming out and trying to understand if there's maybe a better opportunity that you can serve and that you can address. When you look, more generally, what does this mean? It means, well, if you want to become a successful entrepreneur, you need to make sure that you're not only running fast, but you also run in the right direction. And you all know Usain Bolt, he wins a gold medal when he runs in the right direction and runs fast. But the tools out there that are available to you, and you know some of them obviously, are not really fit for helping you to understand what your starting position and what the right direction is. In fact, when we look at startups, and we have done a study, more than 70%, 73% to be precise, currently need to pivot. So that means they change from one market to another market. And more broadly speaking, what does this mean? It means, well, you have lost time, you have wasted resources. I don't want to suggest that you can foresee all of these things that will happen down the road. You cannot fully preclude yourself or safeguard yourself from pivoting to another, from having to pivot to another market. But nonetheless, what you can do is to say, hey, I make sure that I understand from the beginning that the market that I want to address is actually an interesting one, that there might not be more interesting ones out there. And I can make sure that in case I need to pivot, I can be more flexible. And both of these questions are quite fundamental. Let me go a bit deeper and explain exactly where the tools are that you often use and what they cannot help you answer. You know, of course, the business model Canvas, a very widely used tool, which is very valuable if you want to design your business model. In addition, the value proposition Canvas that helps you to design your value proposition. And then, of course, some lean learning processes where you do customer journeys, you discover the customer, you validate the customer, you build your company in an agile development process with iterations. When you think more closely about these tools that you know, they can give you lots of interesting and important advice. However, what they cannot tell you is what a good starting position for you these customer journeys are. And let me go back to this example that I just used with the space shuttle. Yes, you can apply the ceramic tile in your space shuttle application, but you can also address the other markets, the automotive market, the fridge market, etc. So where do you actually do the customer journey? For which market do you develop a business model? In other words, what is missing in all of these tools, and what I want to discuss with you today, is this very fundamental question: what is actually my starting position? What is a good market to begin with? Because once we figured out that, you make sure, at least to a significant extent, right from the beginning, that you're not wasting your time on inferior applications when better applications are out there. Yeah? So when you think about this, what this means concretely is that you need to identify what opportunities are in store for you. I'm going to talk about this later on. But you also need to understand what the different properties, what the different characteristics of these opportunities are. So in essence, when you look at all these tools, how I'd like to phrase it is that the where to play is missing. Where do we actually act and create your company? What's your fertile ground? While the other tools tell you, by and large, the how to play. How do you play in a certain domain? By better understanding the customer, by designing a product that fits better the needs of your customers. So what I'm going to introduce you is a tool that complements these other tools in a very important manner. The tool is called the Market Opportunity Navigator. It's a tool that helps you to define the starting position that I just outlined very briefly and that I will come back later on to. And this is a tool that works very nicely in combination with the other tools. We actually designed it in combination, knowing about these other tools, obviously, but also designed it in a way that we incorporated feedback actually from the people developing who have developed the other tools, namely Alex Osterwalder and Yves Penier in particular. So what you see here is the tool in an overview here in blue on that slide. I'm going to walk you in the next minutes through each of these steps, but just let me give you a top-level overview of what the tool helps you to do. This tool is a tool that opens your mind. It opens your mind to potentially other opportunities that you can address with your venture. So it's a tool that makes you less rigid. And that's when we look at entrepreneurs, especially the successful ones, that's a key trait of entrepreneurs. They are very flexible in their head. They are able to work on their company, look at their company from multiple perspectives. And this tool helps you to do this. You zoom out, you see the big picture before you zoom in again. So the zooming out process is one where you identify multiple opportunities. In the second step, we help you prioritize them by evaluating them. And in a third step, we help you to say, that's the opportunity to focus on. Yeah? So by no means the tool is designed to make you spread your resources too thinly by pursuing too many things. Not at all. You have a broader focus and then you zoom in and focus on the opportunity that seems to be the most valuable to you. As I said, and as you see it here in this cascading picture, this is a tool that helps you to identify promising market opportunities, then develop business models, the value proposition, do deep dives into the customers that are at the heart of the market opportunity, and take back that knowledge and learn about these markets. Yeah? So it's also an iterative process where you dive deeper into your startup and learn better what you're actually able to accomplish. For those of you who already think they have a good market to start with, this is a tool that helps you validate whether this market is actually as promising as you may think. And it helps you on another front. It helps you also to see where further growth options are. And this is something that is not to be underestimated, because these further growth options provide you with important ways to convince investors to invest in your startup, because you're not only a one-trick pony, you cannot only do these narrow things, but you can do many more things. So it's about developing a growth story for your startup and ultimately becoming a venture that scales up very well, because you are able to create significant value not only in one market, but in multiple markets. Finally, what this tool helps you to do is to be more agile, meaning you are, by having a wider lens, by understanding that you can apply your technology or your competences to multiple domains, you are wiser in choosing what you do. And let me just pick one example to foreshadow this thought, this agility thought. When you know that you could address multiple domains with your venture, you're much more careful in picking the brand name of your startup. So instead of picking a very narrow brand name, you pick a wide brand name. Or you pick one which could easily be widened. And let me give you an example that we all know, Uber. Uber is a company that you can think of as being a taxi company. It brings people from A to B. They compete heavily with the taxi industry. But Uber has gone very far from that initial thought. Uber is, of course, the taxi company, but Uber also does Uber Eats. So it's a company that brings food to your doorstep. What Uber has also started to do is to do Uber Wine, which is a subsidiary there where they actually help you do wine tours next to Silicon Valley, in Napa Valley. You just hop into the car and it helps you to navigate through the vineyards. So in that sense, it's a tourism company. When you just now think about what I just said and then lean back and say, hey, what type of company do I have here? It's actually a company that can do many things. It's not in one industry. And what we see here already is that many of this very definition, what type of company you are, this is all in your head. You might say, okay, there are industry classifications. My company is a company that is competing with the taxi companies. But still, this is all in your head. You define the venture you want to create, the venture potential that you might want to exploit later on. And here, when you look at the Uber example, this is a very interesting example, because no one tells Uber that you're only a one-trick pony. Actually, Uber tells the Uber management, the entrepreneurs of Uber, basically say, hey, we can do many, many more things. We are actually not only operating in an industry, we are operating in an arena. And this is quite an important thought that is not only relevant for startups, this is also an important thought that is as relevant for established companies. When you think about one of the most prominent examples that probably many of you know, it's photography. Analog photography companies like Kodak and Fujifilm that used to be the dominating players in the 80s, 1980s and early 90s, until the digital camera arrived. And the digital camera disrupted that business in a very fundamental manner. But what we see with these two companies is that they reacted in very different ways to this technological disruption. Kodak basically went down a certain path. They defined themselves as this analog photography company, while Fujifilm said, okay, we are not only a photography company, we are actually a company that has a lot of important competences that we can build on. And these important competences are shown here on the slide. You see, this is actually a depiction taken from the Fujifilm website. This is not invented by me. And this is quite interesting to observe, because what Fujifilm is saying here is that due to their exposure in the photographic domain, they became an expert in many different advanced material technologies, including coatings, membranes, organic compounds, you know. And by combining these abilities, Fujifilm was able to develop a wide variety of new applications, desalination, gas membranes, istropore filters, and they are also a key player in the cosmetics industry nowadays. Yeah? So if you lean back and just reflect on what this means, this actually means that entrepreneurial imagination is at its best here. You know? The managers of the company didn't only look at, you know, very narrowly at the markets they served previously, analog photography, but they said, okay, when you are a company that is able to, you know, develop films, etc., you are good in many chemical processes, in many other processes, and these competences can be used in very different domains. So in essence, if you want to take a general takeaway, what this means is that we have, in all of these cases, be it the startup case that I just described, with the Uber example that I just described, with the space shuttle example, with the ceramic tiles, and with the established firm case, it's a matter of the perception of what you have in your hands. It's a matter of perception of what type of company you can and want to create. And when you want to conceptualize this a bit more, it's important not to miss the forest for the trees, as the saying goes, you know, but just to say, hey, me as a company, my firm, my venture, can actually be much, much more than maybe I thought it could be. Okay? So up to Saturday, and I will specify that at the end of the talk a bit more clearly, what you should do, but up to Saturday, I want you to engage in this very important reflection process, what your company is about, what you want your company to become, by considering also its potential, the other opportunities that are at your disposal. And this is a very critical type of process, because entrepreneurship and you as an entrepreneur need to work on the company as much as you work in the company. And the working on the company essentially means you are making sure that the big picture strategic decisions are well thought through. And this is one of the big picture strategic decisions, which markets to play in. You also work a lot in the company. You're answering supplier calls. You're trying to make sure your prototype is ready. This is all very important too. But oftentimes the working in the company is so intense that you tend to forget to work on the company. But if no one works on the company, all these major strategic questions remain unaddressed, and you might walk down the wrong path. So looking at that conceptually, when you think about an industry versus an arena, there's an interesting concept by my colleague Rita McGrath, who has written a book called The End of Competitive Advantage. And her fundamental thesis is very much aligned with what we just discussed. She basically says, look, there's this industry concept that has been dominating the logic of companies for a long time. There it's about positional advantage. You're the number one company in your industry, number two, number three, whatnot. It's about market share. And in order to be the leading company in your industry, you would buy up another company, for instance. You know? So likely acquisition behavior, if you move down in that table, would be within industry. In an arena concept, where you are more broadly seeing what you could potentially do as a startup, or as an established company, by the way, it's not about positional advantage. It's about understanding where you can play, is the territory in which you can play. You know? So it's about capturing territory. It's about the share of the potential opportunity space that you are able to address. And it's about, you know, if you don't have the competences yet, it's also about acquiring competences that are needed to enter a certain domain. But the logics that dominate this industry perspective and the arena perspectives are very different. And the industry logic is a very well-defined one. Yeah? You exactly know who are the industry players. But the arena perspective is one that is allowing you to understand the growth potential of your company beyond the core that you might conceive of being an industry. So the question is, how do you define actually this opportunity space? What are the opportunities that would be available to you, as an entrepreneur or as a manager? You might say, well, I have my opportunities. I see the opportunities. I have these ideas when I'm in the shower, when I take a stroll along the lake or along the beach. But this is not something which you can bank on. This is not something you can rely on. You cannot stand all day long in a shower and just observe your own creativity. That doesn't work. So it's relying on luck is not something that is good management advice. So what I did was with colleagues over the last 15 years to better understand how we could actually help startups to identify more of the opportunity space. And we engaged in a lot of research with several thousand of startups to better understand what this early stage in the entrepreneurial process actually means. And just looking back a couple of slides, let me remind you that this early stage basically shapes the type of market you enter and the type of identity your company will assume. So it's about performance and identity. In other words, two of the most profound decisions that you will make as entrepreneurs. I don't go into all the research. If you're interested, reach out to me and I'm happy to share the papers with you. But I want to say that we have done quite significant work to make you understand, for us to understand what it means to identify multiple opportunities, why firms might not be able to do so, and what the performance potential with identifying multiple opportunities is. Based on lots of requests we got for us, in terms of asking for advice for this critical stage. Based on all of these requests, we said, okay, let's write a book that summarizes the key insights and helps entrepreneurs, takes them by the hand and walks them through this important process, makes them reflect what their company is about and where they should play. So the book is called Where to Play, 3 Steps for Discovering Your Most Valuable Market Opportunities. It's been out for 1.5 years, roughly. It's now available in a couple of languages. And what I want to introduce to you is the process that we map out in the book, and that is by now applied by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of startups that have learned the process and engaged with it and have become more successful with it in the way. What you see here is the 3 steps briefly described. The first step is about understanding which opportunities exist for you, based on your existing competences and maybe new technology that you seek to develop. The second step, it's about understanding what are the most attractive opportunities. And then the third step is one where you focus on the one opportunity that is the most attractive one, or in case these opportunities are very closely related, you might want to think about even addressing 2 opportunities. But in essence, it's a process where you look big, and then you focus in on the most valuable opportunities that might exist for you. And I give you this example. I explained the method with an example of a company out of Lausanne, where I'm based at EPFL. This is a company called Flyability. And this is quite an interesting company. It does drones, and they are in a cage. I'll show you in a second a little video that explains what this company is about. But let me illustrate first how this process works with the main navigator worksheet that you see here and that you have available for download as well later on. What you see here is the process in the 3 steps. Behind each of these steps, there's a worksheet that helps you ask the right questions, and I explain those to you in a minute as well. But just big picture, what you see here are these 3 steps: the opportunity set step, number 1, the attractiveness map, number 2, and the agile focus dartboard, number 3. The opportunity set as the first output is it's signaled here with a little bag in a graphical depiction, is one where you say, hey, these are all the opportunities that we have been able to identify as a team, all the markets that are possibly out there. Yeah? The second step is about assessing these markets in terms of their potential, but also the challenges that are associated with those markets. And that will give you 4 quadrants. There's a quadrant that we call the quick wins, where the potential is low, where the challenge is also low. This is something you can do fairly easily for a quick return. You have, if you move further to the right, the question levels where you say, okay, the challenge is very high, but the potential is not very high. So this is a quadrant where you might want to think twice if you want to actually do something along these lines. We see actually in our daily work with the entrepreneurs here on the campus and beyond the campus that unfortunately many start off in this quadrant and then have to pivot, have to change to another market. And this is something you want to avoid, you know, and the broad lens that I've been just describing helps you to avoid that pitfall. You have another quadrant, which we call the gold mine quadrant. It's on the left upper corner. There, the potential is high and the challenge level is low, you know, or relatively low. So that means this is a very interesting quadrant. You have less of a challenge, but quite a potential to grow your venture. And then you have a quadrant where both the challenges are high and the potential is high. This is the moonshot quadrant, where you say, hey, that's something that requires a lot of effort, but there's also a lot of potential return. And this is basically the quadrant, if you want to say so, that Elon Musk loves most, because that's what he typically does. It's the moonshots, it's the Tesla company, etc., etc. You know, so in that sense, entrepreneurs might choose this one. You just need to figure out early on if this is the market you want to enter, if this is the quadrant you actually want to enter, and what this actually means. You know, you might have to raise many more funds if you have a moonshot in your hands compared to a gold mine or a quick win. Yeah? And understanding this is one important additional outcome of the market opportunity navigator. The third step then looks at the agile focus dartboard, where you are, where your goal is to say, or your goal is to identify which opportunity you want to focus on, which ones you want to keep open, and which ones you place in storage. In other words, you focus on one that you deem most attractive for you. You have some that you keep open as future growth options or as plan Bs, should the plan A not work out. And then you put some that you don't want to bother with anymore into storage. What this does is to give you some very clear strategic guideline on what market you want to focus on, what is the most attractive ground to play in. But it also gives you what I call mental sanity, in the sense that you are able to put aside important considerations because you have thought through them. You know, they are not in your head anymore, and you can actually put them aside and figure out where to focus on. I mentioned that behind each of these major elements in the Market Opportunity Navigator, you have a worksheet that guides you through the process. These worksheets have been designed in a way that makes your life easy because they asking the right questions. You know, they take you by the hand and guide you through this process that is so important in the early life of a venture. And I help you ask, you know, in a very clear manner, questions that you answer, and you have then the conclusions that you draw. Okay, let me be a bit more concrete in why we need these worksheets and what they do. Yeah? The first step, as I mentioned, is about identifying the opportunity set. That's a step where you are looking broadly, as I mentioned. It's a step where you are discovering options. And what we know from our research is that this is a real asset for the venture. You know, you just are no longer a one-trick pony. It's about seeing many more growth options. And this is a very, when I talk to entrepreneurs, and you will make the same experience, I'm pretty sure, this is a step that is liberating in the sense that you understand better what you can possibly achieve with your company. Yeah? How does this work? You see this here. This is worksheet 1. In worksheet 1, you have 2 parts. One is about your abilities, and the second part is about the customer and the applications. What this signifies, this line in the middle signifies, these 2 parts signify, to put differently, is that you need to think about the abilities of your venture in their own right, without an application in mind. Yeah? Just think about what you can do or what type of abilities you want to develop. Yeah? And you note them there. I give you in a minute an example, but this is the top sheet, top part of the sheet. In the second step, you would say, okay, based on these abilities, what can I possibly do with them? Which customers may need them? And then you zoom into this more closely. Yeah? I'm going to explain this to you in a second, but just the big picture of what this worksheet does. It helps you to de-link from your current applications that you have in mind, forget about the customers that you had in mind, and try to understand what your company can do in its own right. Yeah? And then you identify the opportunities that are possibly there. This first step is so important because it cuts the tie with your current thinking about the customers. And this is important to have a broader mind. This is important for a startup, but it's where it's more easily done because you have not invested a lot in your customers, in your market yet. But this is all the more difficult for established companies that seek to identify new growth potential. Right? Let me show you what this means with an example. This is the example of Flyability that I briefly mentioned earlier. Flyability is a company that provides drones in a cage. So they are a company that is quite particular, if you want to say so. It is the cage drone. The cage drone has certain properties, and I'm going to show you in the little movie that I will pull up what this drone can do for a minute or so. And then we're going to think together what you can actually do with this drone. Okay, so you see here the video. Let me just check. Let me share this with you. Here we go. Okay. You might see this now. Let me see.
Flyability introduces Helios, the world's first collision-tolerant drone. Access confined and complex spaces without any risk of crashing. Helios features a full HD camera and a thermal camera embedded on the drone. The robot's live video feed allows the operator to get the drone to the most inaccessible places, up to 5 kilometers when in direct line of sight. Gather close-up images for high-resolution data with a sub-millimeter resolution. Onboard LED lighting system and a complete remote control of the camera settings allows to navigate and inspect even in pitch-dark environments. Changing batteries only takes seconds. Just unplug the used one, insert another of the provided batteries, and you are back to flying again. Helios is safe to fly close and even in contact with humans. It avoids expensive, hazardous, and time-consuming access methods such as scaffolding, rope access, or sky climbers. It is incredibly easy to operate, and after only a few hours of training, you will be able to perform your first jobs.
Let's stop here. I think you understand what this does. Let's stop share. Oops, let me get back to you. Okay, share. Sorry, I lost my slide here due to the video. We were thinking about Helios, the drone. And if you think now about this drone, it's actually a very interesting drone. It's very different to the other drones where you have the propellers that are therefore dangerous. And when you look at the video that we just have seen, it's actually visible that the drone can actually perform some magnificent things. So how would you fill in that worksheet for this drone? Number one, you would say, hey, this is a drone that has unique accessibility. That's a core ability. It has collision tolerance. Humans walls, it's decoupled, has a light protection case, it can roll on any surface, it operates in a range of temperatures and pressures, it can fly, it has aviation abilities, on-site video piloting, it can fly through dark, smoked, dusty environments, and has limited flight duration. And then third, it has an imagery system. It does HD recording, thermal recording, real-time video streaming, remotely adjustable post-mission analysis. You can do all of these fancy things, okay? So when you think big picture. This is a description of the abilities of the drone that you have just seen. Okay? What this also is not suggesting is any application. You know, this is neutral. This is de-linked from any application. You know, these are abilities that you can conceive of in their own right, basically. You look at the drone, and that's what the drone is about. Yeah? And I would like to encourage you, that will be one of the tasks that I ask you to do until Saturday, to think about your company in the same way. Some of you might not have all of these abilities developed. There you just put in the abilities that you intend to develop. Yeah? Others have that, of you have that already clearly mapped out. There you could say, okay, what happens if I put in this fourth box something like artificial intelligence? You know, what would this do to the technology, to the competences and abilities that I currently have? If you look at this, this gives you a good stock understanding of what you have. Yeah? But the interesting part, the part where you need a lot of creativity, comes now. You know, where can you actually apply this drone? And this is quite exciting. If you apply this big picture thinking, where can you apply this? You can apply this in applications in industrial inspection. You can apply this in infrastructure inspection. You can apply this in security, search and rescue. And these are very, very different domains. Yeah? So if you think about industrial inspection, what can it do? We saw it actually in the movie. The drone can go up. It can look at these gas tanks. It can see if that gas tank has a leak, and it can report that back. It can film the gas tank and inspect it in a very detailed manner. Yeah? There are also the same application area would be in power plants. You can inspect the thermal boiler of power plants, the nuclear rooms of power plants. And you can think of a domain like in maritime vessel inspections, where you look at the boats and see if they have cracks or other damages. You know? You move to another application area, which is infrastructure inspection. And that's quite an exciting area too. Why? Because there are lots of infrastructures that you need to inspect. Think about the bridges. You know, you want to inspect whether the bridge has actually a certain crack, you know, or not, whether it's still safe for the cars or the trains that ride on it. Or you can inspect indoor facilities, mines, for instance. And then you have a third major application area, which is security, search and rescue. There you could, for instance, apply it to the police when you are observing crowds at sports events, at other events. You know. The military could apply it. Rescue forces could apply it, firefighters, etc. And what this does now to you, what this helps you to do is to say, I have now a big picture perspective of where my drone can be applied. And what you already see, you know, without much explanation of myself having to be done, is that these are very different market domains, that there's quite a big application space. And one takeaway is already that all we see here happens in your brain. You know, are you able to imagine these other application domains, these other opportunities? Yeah? In other words, it's not given that you just have one domain. Yeah? Link it back to Uber, Uber Eats, or Uber Taxi. You know? These are very different application domains. You can define yourself as only being in one and look at the world in a very narrow manner, or you are embracing the richness of what you potentially could do. And this is what we see here. You know? As I mentioned, you know, these different domains have different performance potential behind it. We will evaluate that in the next step. But if you think about this also more clearly, what does it mean? It means the type of company, the type of drone company that you are trying to develop will be quite different if you're moving into infrastructure inspection or security, search and rescue, or if you're moving in industrial inspection. Yeah? And coming back to an example I gave earlier, the choice of your brand name. You know? How should you call a company, you know, that is able to do all of these things? You know? And I think their Flyability is quite an interesting name and a quite helpful name, because Flyability as a company name allows you to do all these magnificent things. You know? While you could say, okay, I also call my company, because I only see one opportunity, maritime vessel inspection by drones.com. Yeah? What does this do? It restricts you in a very, very narrow manner. And in case that market is not viable, you would even have to change your brand name later on to move into another domain. Or put differently, if you're able to see manifold opportunities, what this helps you in your head is to also make decisions early on that allow to put, as I called it earlier, agility into the DNA of your venture, because you pick a brand name that allows you to cater to other domains. Yeah? So without a lot of investment, you can enter these other domains, and you don't have necessarily to change your brand name in order to do so. Yeah? I already alluded to the step that comes after this step, where you then initially identify the opportunities. You know, you put all your opportunities in your little bag as it's depicted here. And this is the opportunity set that you work with. And I alluded to the second step by saying, well, all of these opportunities that you have identified might not be as valuable as the other one. Yeah? And that's why you need in the second step to evaluate the potential and the challenges behind each of these opportunities. Yeah? Again, this is a critical step to understand. What you need to see is that it's important to be able to compare and contrast these opportunities. And that's why in the first step, if you look here, we are pushing you towards making these little trees down here. These little trees on the bottom, think just about oil and gas with pressure vessels and storage tanks, or power plants with thermal boilers, nuclear loops. These little trees are helping you to define opportunities that are roughly on the same level of abstraction. Yeah? I mean by this that it would be useless to compare power plant opportunity to maritime vessel inspection opportunity. Yeah? It would be useless to compare power plant thermal boilers to oil and gas. These are very different definitional levels of opportunities. So in other words, what we want you to do is to be on a similar level of abstraction. So we have power plants, thermal boilers. This would be an opportunity that you can compare well to oil and gas storage tanks. Yeah? So the little tree figure that we put in the worksheet should remind you that you need to compare and should compare only opportunities that are alike in the sense of abstraction level. Yeah? That's why you have in your little shopping bag opportunities that are by and large similar in terms of abstraction level. And that provides you now with a good substance, with a good basis for evaluating them. So how do we evaluate them? What we do in this second step is to fill in the attractiveness map, meaning you are able to understand what the attractiveness of each of these opportunities are and better grasp the downsides, compare them, and prioritize them. In a way, it's about combining a lot of pieces of your puzzle into one clear portfolio. And the logic of a portfolio is actually something very appealing, because once you think about a portfolio, it is about working on the company. It's working about perhaps the most important part of your company. It's the growth potential and the market your company can serve. Yeah. So how do you evaluate the opportunities? This is where worksheet 2 comes into play. Worksheet 2 is assessing on the left side the potential, and on the right side the challenge of each opportunity. And what you can do is to say, okay, we are looking at one opportunity. Here in the case of flyability, it's the power plants, the thermal boilers. That's the opportunity that they want to focus on. And let's just look at the potential that this opportunity entails, and then the challenges that this opportunity entails as well. The potential has 3 sub-factors to consider. And these factors, by the way, come out of a lot of research that entrepreneurship researchers have amassed over the years. What we did is to combine them in this accessible framework. What you see concretely here is the potential factors. Number 1, compelling reason to buy. Is there an unmet need? Is there an effective solution to meet that need? Is it better than current solutions? And you rate your solution in that domain. The second variable, the second factor is the market volume. What is the market size and what is the expected growth? And third, you evaluate the economic viability. Is there a margin that you can earn? Can the customer actually pay for that? Do the customers stick to you or not? Are they fickle and move from one market to the other? Overall, this gives you a picture of the potential that you rate below. You know, you put a summary score, not with summing up exactly what you see. You know, there's, you know, it should be the different factors, the three factors here should give you a rough guidance of where the potential lies. So this is not a perfect linear equation, if you want to say so. Let's turn to the challenge side, which is the right side. Here you would look at the implementation obstacles first. You know, how difficult is it to implement your solution in this market? So it's about product development difficulties, sales and distribution difficulties, funding challenges in that regard. It's also about the time to revenue. Yeah? Think a bit in your back of your head what I described earlier with the moonshots. You know? This takes a long time. You know? Think about the Virgin Galactic. Think about other SpaceX as activities launched by Richard Branson, Elon Musk. This takes maybe a decade or even more. You know? So time to revenue is something that you want to consider here. In the case of flyability with the power plants, they rated this as mid. And then you have a third one, which is the external risks. These are risks that you are not able to control. You know? Competitive threats, third-party dependencies, barriers to adoption. This is definitely something where you have to consider, because these external risks can, in the worst case, kill your company. And then you do the same summary score as I have explained with the potential. And overall, this would lead to an overall challenge that is between low and mid here. So it's not, you know, it's an opportunity that is quite good in terms of potential and quite okay in terms of the overall challenge. You do this now for each of the opportunities that you have identified, and then you can say, hey, this is now a learning that I have in terms of the different opportunities and their level of attractiveness. What is important to remember is that this is not an exact science. Now, this is not hard science. This is not physics. You know? This is a process that you are engaging in to learn. It's a process where you validate what you are trying to do through actions. You know, you can talk to customers in these different domains. Take your time. You know, this is a very important decision. So you might want to talk to customers, make phone calls, you know, visit some customers in these different domains. You generate your assumptions. And in doing so, what you ultimately seek to do is to understand the upsides and downsides of each opportunity. And that's a very, very fundamental learning in venture creation. It's about understanding what is actually the domain that you're addressing. What it also does, it helps you to confront your biases. And let's just jump back to this slide. It helps you to confront your biases in at least two ways. Number one, you might be biased towards a certain market because you know that market well, but you don't question yourself systematically whether this is a good market in terms of its potential or its challenge. It also helps you to confront your biases because it allows you, or it forces you to be more thorough in your evaluation. In essence, you are looking at these 6 factors here that need to be evaluated. And that's a very thorough way of looking at the potential and the challenges. While when you are doing a gut feeling estimate of what you're trying to do, you would never be as thorough. And a gut feeling is a type of bias evaluation that is sometimes good, but oftentimes can also be misleading. Yeah? So in essence, what Flyability did is to assemble or do the scoring for all the opportunities, these 5 that they deemed reasonable and valuable, and they scored them. And what you already see here is quite an interesting picture. This picture shows you that the opportunities differ, and they differ in important ways. They differ in terms of the challenge level and the potential level. There are some that are moonshots. There are some that are goldmine, or one that is a goldmine, and some that are moving into this corner where you might not want to be, the questionable corner. Yeah? What it shows you thus is a portfolio. It shows you what is the upside and the downside. And it gives you an idea of what your venture creation process might entail if you want to address the police market or the oil, gas, and storage tanks. If these are moonshots, it takes a long time. So you better raise a lot of money to engage in this and to launch a venture for these domains. Or you go, look at the gold mine market and say, hey, these thermal power plants, the thermal boilers are actually quite interesting. They are, in terms of challenges, low, and in terms of potential, quite high. So I think a natural outcome of this is to say, hey, we are in a domain here, maybe with the power plants, that looks quite promising. So flyability is challenged as a next step, and the final step in this task is to figure out what are the best options, which is the focus that they should put in their venture. We call this the agile focus strategy. So you focus on your most promising opportunity. And you put, because you have this wider lens initially, agility in your venture. Think about this brand name example that I gave you. This is about agility. This is about trying to understand what a brand name is that allows you to move from A to B, either as a plan B or as a future growth option. And I come back later on other dimensions of what agility actually means. When you choose your primary market, you might feel like in a candy store. And when you remember back as kids, this looks very enticing. This looks very, makes a lot of appetite to try all of this. But you all know what happens when we try all of this. Yes, you're going to have a sick stomach. And that's similar when you have a startup. If you try all of these things as a team of 2 or 3, or maybe even 4, you will spread yourself too thinly. So you cannot possibly do all. So what this third step entails with basically your venture creation process is to make sure that you are actually focusing on something that is useful and try to understand what are opportunities that you might want to keep open for later on, either as a plan B or a future growth option. So how do you do this? This is the third worksheet, and this is a worksheet that is actually quite simple to fill in. You pick one primary market. You see this labeled over there. The first step is to pick your primary market. The second step is to pick other opportunities that you have identified as possible backup or growth options. And the third step is to say, which opportunity do we want to focus on? And which ones do we want to keep open or place in storage? So what you do is to pick one market as your primary one. Here, in this case, it's the power plants, the thermal boilers. What Flyability did is to pick, when you remember the example from the previous slides, they picked the gold mine. This is actually a smart choice. But there is no rule that you need to pick the gold mine. It depends on what you want to achieve. You can pick a questionable. You might ask yourself, is that a smart way to, or a smart thing to do? Maybe not. You might pick a stepping stone option that allows you to grow your venture sequentially. So you would, for instance, start with a quick win, and then you enter that market and you enter another market later on. Or you put all your efforts into a moonshot domain and say, hey, this is what we want to aspire, and this is the vision we have to get there. So it depends on what you prefer doing, and we by no means would give you any moral or normative guidance to say you should do one or the other. That's entirely your choice what you put in this first primary market opportunity up there. Then you pick other domains and say, okay, we evaluate those other domains in relation to this primary opportunity. In this case, you see what Flyability has picked. You then try to understand product and market relatedness, which is an assessment of 2 dimensions in order to understand how closely related are these markets to the power plant market in this case. And there you see that with the little icons, you can say this is not related at all or very closely related. In the case of power plants vis-a-vis oil and gas storage tanks, they are mid-related in terms of product relatedness and closely related in terms of market relatedness. And for Flyability, this would be a great growth option. They rated also the other ones and said, okay, power plants to police surveillance. That's basically the product relatedness is mid, but the market relatedness is not given at all, which is obvious. Power plants and police surveillance are very different domains. Yeah. And they say this is a good backup option. The choice of what a good backup and growth option is actually fairly straightforward. A good backup option should not share the same risk as your primary option. And I think when you think about this, it becomes actually quite clear why. Because if your primary market suffers from the same risk as your backup option, then when the primary market is not feasible, your backup option is also not feasible. Yeah? Should the government decide to forbid activities in one domain and the second domain suffers from the same risk, it is gone as well. Yeah? So you want to pick, in other words, a backup option that does not share the same risk as the primary market. And then you can pick other growth options and say, hey, if the first market works out, this is allowing me to grow later on. In the third step, you see it here, you design your agile focus strategy and say, hey, what are the options that you focus on? You focus here on the power plants, the thermal boilers, and the other three you would keep open. Yeah? In essence, this gives you then the full navigator dartboard, the agile focus dartboard as it's called, where you focus on your core market and then you have other three markets that you keep open, and flyability put actually the power plants, the nuclear rooms into storage. Overall, this is now a process where you see, and I repeat this again because it's important, you open up, you evaluate, and then you focus on the most promising domain. What you do in this process is not only to figuring out the most promising domain, but you also put agility, as I said, into the DNA of your venture. What it helps you to decide early on is to develop your technology in a more modular manner. So in case you want to enter these other domains, it's easier. Think about the drone or fliability. Many things are modular. So if you want to move from one market to the other, it's quite quick to assemble a new type of drone that could that could address these other markets. It affects how you find your patents, the application areas. It helps you to recruit employees that might be more versatile and can work in multiple domains. Ultimately, it's the choice of the brand name, as I discussed early on. This is actually a tool that can be applied in technology ventures. And you remember what I said earlier with the flyability example and also with the space shuttle example. These were all technology-related examples. And this is a very important tool for these domains. Yeah? Think about here the examples of technologies that have all come down in price quite tremendously. So you could say, I put sensors, 3D printing capabilities, et cetera, into my flyability startup. Because these prices have come down so much, they are widely available now, these technologies for use in consumer applications, for instance. Yeah? So you can think about the drones that we, from flyability, and add to the ability mix any of the other technologies. Just to name an example, you could do 3D printing capabilities into the drone, and it can possibly repair remotely some leaks on containers. Yeah? But this is not only about the drones or technology. This is also about Main Street businesses. This is a very wide. You need to have a very wide understanding of what your competences could be. And let's introduce to you Frank Dillon. He's a great journalist from the Irish Times, who I did an interview with when launching the book. And we started to discuss. And he said, look, Mark, I read your book with so much interest because it opened my eye of what I can actually do. So he applied the method and said, hey, as a journalist, I can do very interesting things. I know that I can write great articles in the Irish Times on businesses and new ventures, established businesses, and anything that has to do with businesses and the economy. So he's a specialist in this domain with great writing skills. But this is also a very narrow definition of what he could do. He applied the navigator process, and in doing so, actually realized, well, I have many more skills than that. I actually, if I look at my abilities, yes, I can write, but also have great abilities, have a great network of business people that I have interviewed. I have a great network of people that I work with, where the emails. I can speak well in front of the public. So what I can do is actually I can start organizing congresses in the business domain. I know as a journalist the hottest topics in business. I have all the relations to the key industry players, the key business players. I can invite them to the conferences as audience and speakers. And I'm able to lead through such a day because I'm great in communication. Yeah. You can also say I start become an author. That would be closer to the Irish Times idea. Or you could say I'm a keynote speaker actually for events, my own keynote speaker, because I actually know a lot about these topics. Yeah? And many, many more things he could possibly do. Yeah? But again, this is opening the eyes of, this again in your head, what you can potentially do and being more systematic about it and more stringent in your application process. So what I want to do is that I urge you to engage in this important process from the beginning and try to understand what your company is actually about. And I bet that many of you have not thought through this in a very systematic manner. Some of you might have jumped too quickly into customer processes, which is fine. What I want you where I want to push you to is to say, hey, let's take a step back. Let's take a few days. And it's not much a few days in your life, and figure out these extremely important questions with your venture. And as I said, I will be with you on Saturday and we can discuss this in person. I want you to, up to Saturday, engage in the first two steps. We have time on Saturday to work on this worksheet 3. But the first two worksheets, I want you to employ and then to put the results in your navigator. Concretely, please use worksheet 1 to identify your abilities in your venture. Put the results of your brainstorming about the opportunities that you can see in the market opportunity set on the navigator. You see that here in the lower part. Make sure that you compare, just as a reminder, opportunities at the same abstraction level. And I also want you to perform worksheet 2 and then put your results in the attractiveness. In other words, look at each of those opportunities, rate them according to their potential and their challenges. You have a little of time to do some backup research on that front and come up with your own portfolio. And you might want to start discussing in your team what a good opportunity could be for you, what this means to your venture. And on Saturday, we will have time to work on worksheet 3 and discuss worksheet 3 with you, but also to look at what you have done in worksheet 1 and 2. I want to use this opportunity also to then reflect on the basis of what you are actually trying to accomplish in terms of your firm strategy. As I mentioned, this is a suite of business tools that you are able to engage in. What we see is that this tool works extremely well with the business model canvas, with the lean customer process. And now that you understand it better, I think you also see better how these different tools can be combined. In essence, what you're doing here is to develop your starting position. Where do you do customer journeys? Think about flyability. In which domain would they start to do customer journeys? Where would you develop a business model? And then you go back and say, hey, I learned something about this market. It might not be as good. Let's look at another market. But over time, it also is a tool that helps you to understand which other growth options are there. So in a way, it helps you to move further along in your growth journey. And it helps you once a customer might approach you from another domain to understand, is this something I should consider or is this something I take away? Yeah? Let me conclude by pointing you to a couple of resources that we have made available. You can go to the website wheretoplay.co. That's important. It's co, not com. www.wheretoplay.co. You can get a free sample chapter, join the mailing list, etc. What I will make available is also the worksheets. They are freely available on the website once you register, but I also make them available through the direct means via the course administrators. There's a free online course if you want to learn more. If you need other means of support, email me. You see my email below. And with this said, I look forward to seeing you on Saturday. And you see, you join all these startups, all these young entrepreneurs that have very successfully engaged in the Market Opportunity Navigator process and have been becoming more smartly about what they work on with their ventures in that case. I look forward to welcoming you. This is me. And let me push back to the main screen because let me see if we can look at this. Because I think we still have some minutes left to take questions if there are some. So I see some questions in the chat box. So some of you have mentioned that the slide sets, let me see. A question here is, yes, you already found the link to the worksheets. Thank you very much. What you see here is, Salim Said has said, what do the three options mean? The two cycles. What this means is, I think I know what type of question you're trying to address. What you have in the navigator, and this is in the third step, I think that's what you meant. In the third step, you have different opportunities. You basically say, okay, we focus on one in the middle. We have our backup options and the growth options that we keep open. We put them in the second cycle. And the third cycle are all the options that you put in storage. So those you don't remember anymore, those you try to keep away, and that creates this mental sanity that you have, that we thought of, that I've discussed earlier. Mohammed, you asked, do we look at opportunities globally or locally? What you do here is to look for application areas. This is different to the geographic question. You are, depending on what your ambitions are, of course, you can scale the ventures, the application areas globally. Think about flyability. They could, if they are moving into the thermal boilers domain, this is something that you do locally, but you can also do this internationally. If you compare the opportunities, it's important to compare them on the same level. If you are someone who wants to go international, I would encourage you to do this internationally. If you are someone who wants to absolutely stay within your country, do this within your country, and but compare all the opportunities relative to each other in this geographical space. Haitam Al-Rawahi, you asked whether you should do this before the exercise of Saturday. I want you to do the steps 1 and 2 before Saturday, because that's something where you lean back, try to reflect, and then we have something material to discuss on Saturday. We don't have the time to do all of this on Saturday, unfortunately, but if you do step 1 and 2, we can discuss the outcomes. I can give you feedback on steps 1 and 2 when I'm there, and then we do together step 3. Yes, Salim, you have answered the question too. Very well done. Can I know the name of the free edX course? It's not the Launching New Ventures course with Chris Tucci. The name of the course, I think now you catch me on, I should know what my course is called. Maybe you just look for the instructor Mark Gruber, M-A-R-C, Gruber, G-R-U-B-E-R, written like this here. And then you find the course also there. I think it's called Finding Your Market Opportunities for Your Technology. I think that's what it's called. Ali, thank you. You figured out what the course is called. Thank you very much. You guys are great. You helped me a lot remotely. Are there any other questions? If there are no more questions, let me just say I thank you very much for your interest. I truly look forward to seeing you on Saturday. This will be truly exciting. Thank you, by the way, for this nice comment that you have given regarding the eye-opening character of what we do here. This is actually what it should be. You know, it should push you to think more broadly before you narrow down. And this is just from an intellectual perspective. You know, as an entrepreneur, you're not only a doer, you're also someone who thinks. You know, from an intellectual challenge, this is one of the most rewarding tasks you probably will engage in early stage venture creation. So I wish you good luck. We see each other on Saturday. Oh yes, there's one more question. Can you apply this for a service and not a product? Absolutely. You figure out what type of opportunities you have in your, what type of abilities you are using in your service business, underlying the service. And then you're trying to figure out what other abilities you could use. Think about Uber. Uber is doing a service with Uber Eats. Uber is doing a service with the taxi company, and Uber is doing a service with the different Napa Valley wine tours. You know, so these are services, you know, based on a technology. How important is the geography of the market versus the market functionality? This is a tool that helps you to figure out the functionality, the application area. And as I said earlier, in response to another question, make sure that you compare them also fairly, in the sense that you don't compare one opportunity that is worldwide to a local one. Make sure that they are calibrated. But the idea of moving locally and internationally is something that is important too, you know, because you are trying to figure out what the best possible opportunity for your venture is. And this creates another set of you know, flexibility in your head, which is important in the startup creation process. Okay, guys, I wish you a wonderful end of the day. Truly look forward to seeing you on Saturday. We will have lots of fun. It will be super interesting. I look forward to that. Take care. Bye-bye.